I would like someone like me, who's lived and worked in America and has a home there for 20 years now, I would like to be described as something else on my visa other than exceptional alien.
42%.
We should have a sensible system. If you want to come to America, you got to be able to contribute to the success of this country.
Please let me get one second.
All right, let Geraldo respond.
My family and I came here. I came to this amazing country.
God bless your family. Said it all
we
about
never took a
families.
handout.
God bless
I'm still
them.
talking.
42%. But to see these kids are rejecting their parents, Israel always and forever, no matter what.
So you guys play word games, but down to the main question that Piers was asking. Look, there's some of his policies that I don't agree with. I don't agree with defund the police. I wouldn't have had government-run grocery stores at the top of my list. I just wouldn't have, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just wouldn't have prioritized it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so we're going to be discussing a few topics today. Chief among those is Zoran Mandami, who just won a massive victory in the New York City mayoral race, the Democratic primary for that race, and is looked like the front runner to win that race. He's very, very popular, and he's being compared to Trump, which is strange because he's the antithesis of what Trump represents. So you could say he's anti-Trump or whatever, but there's a lot of similarities there, if you will. And we're going to be discussing a lot of those, immigration and Trump and a few other topics. Gaza a little bit comes in on this, so y'all get prepared for all that. But before we jump into it, y'all do me that huge favor, if you don't mind, and smash that like button for me. Subscribe to this channel for more content like this. We cover news and politics, and I'll keep you up to date on how you're being manipulated by the corporate press, because you're definitely being manipulated by the corporate press, who loves to lie all the time. And if you could, sign up, become a member, help this channel explode and grow and expand so we can get the message out about how we're being manipulated on a constant basis. But without any further ado, let's get into it, y'all.
A Muslim candidate in a city like New York, and people start evoking 9/11, start putting burqas on the Statue of Liberty and all the stuff I played earlier. Does that not make you feel uncomfortable? New York is one of the most inclusive cities in the world, right? A place normally that's very tolerant to many different religions, many different colors and creeds, right? Surely you would feel uncomfortable as the mayor of New York when that appalling terror attack happened. Are you comfortable that people use 9/11 as a stick to beat him with?
Nobody's doing that, Piers.
Well, they are.
I was the people who protected the Muslim people after 9/11. People expected a tremendous amount of reaction against them. And Bernie Kerik and I put together a task force for 4 weeks, and there was no attack in New York, not a single one, even though you might have expected one, given the kind of emotion involved. And one of the first things I said as I was telling my people to please be careful and watch out, it might be another attack, is do not touch anybody. We're not going to be like them. We don't hate Muslim people. We hate the people who did this. And we have to make it clear to them that we can stand up to them. But then again, I'm not a fool. I know there are a substantial number of Muslims, and there's a substantial amount of the Quran that talks about slaughtering Christians and Jews. And there's a whole group of Muslims who believe that. And unfortunately, an undetermined number of them got into this country in the last 4 years, unlike any other time in our history, because of our pathetic President Biden, who also gave Iran hundreds of millions of dollars, and Obama did it in cash.
But would you have a problem, Rudy? Would you have a problem with a Muslim mayor of New York?
Not if he told me he would write out the portion of the Quran where Muhammad is exhorting the people to kill Christians and Jews, and telling them if he doesn't kill them, they should get tribute from them. If he's like some of the imams that I'm close to who can write that out and can say that, I'd be very comfortable with him. If he's dominated by that sick, pathological philosophy, which dominates not all Muslims, but more than a comfortable amount, given all the killing they've done, then I have a real problem with it. And he doesn't sound like a moderate Muslim. He sounds like a Muslim extremist.
You said, Rudy, that you think there may need to be an investigation to see if Mandami is an enemy of America. Is that the kind of language that is sensible? You said, Mr. Benny Johnson.
I didn't mean an investigation criminal. I meant for the purpose of voting. You and I should do the investigation as voters.
Do you really see him as an enemy of America?
Do I see him as an enemy of America?
Yeah.
What he's saying? my personal.
Yes.
You're damn right I do. I think he's going to destroy New York City. I think this is a disaster time for New York City. This guy becomes mayor, the city is gone. People are leaving the city already. You can't say things like the things he's saying and not frighten the hell out of people. I mean, it has nothing to do with even 9/11. Had 9/11 not happened, he'd be an enemy of the city. He's espousing a philosophy that wants to destroy America, wants to destroy the Jewish people, wants to destroy the Christian people, and really would like to destroy all the Muslims who disagree with him. And he is a very strong supporter of that, and he doesn't make a distinction. And he becomes very cute and stupid and silly. Plus, he's totally unqualified. He's a 33-year-old do-nothing from a rich family who's never accomplished a damn thing in his life. Whenever we've gotten a mayor like that, he's been a terrible failure, like de Blasio. This guy's not an accomplished man. He's a rich kid who has learned excessive, crazy philosophy so that he can sound smart, I think. That's the best explanation I can give of him. It might be worse.
Unfortunately, Rudy Giuliani has turned into a bit of a crackpot, if you will. You don't ever attack somebody's religion, especially Muslims. You don't attack Christians. You don't attack their religion, for crying out loud. Like, what is he doing right here? Somebody like Mandami, right? You attack their policy, for sure, because it's easily attackable, right? Socialism, especially in this country, right? It's just nonsense. You attack the policies. You don't attack the person, my dude. Like, what are we doing here? This dude isn't some Muslim extremist, for crying out loud. Sure, he's a radical leftist, but that's very different than Muslim extremist. Yeah, you look at a lot of his rhetoric. Sure, it's kind of inflammatory, but once again, comparing him to Donald Trump, he's kind of inflammatory too, you know, just from the other side over here. So, you know, let's not dig into this guy's philosophy, if you will. That's not really all that good to do, right? It just seems like personal attacks. You just ad hominem all day long on that. Like, so, you know, if we could stay away from that. But, you know, Rudy Giuliani's turned into a bit of a crackpot in his older age. You know, the great Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City, who saved New York City, who turned New York City into a very, very great city. You know, he made New York great again, if you will. You know, but he's kind of went kind of flippant here in his older age. It's kind of fascinating to watch, but let's continue this debate because we're going to get into a little bit of substance here.
Let's debate this now with Cenk, Geraldo, and Lindy. Well, Cenk, you were putting a lot of faces there. What did you make of what Rudy Giuliani said?
Yeah, your audience should ignore everything Rudy Giuliani just said. Everything was a lie. Mamdani's never supported Hamas, never said the word intifada. Doesn't hate Jews or Christians. Muslims don't have to write out parts of the Quran. It would be absurd to say, hey, if you're a Jew running for mayor, you've now got to write out parts of the Torah or the Talmud. Otherwise, we don't accept Jews. If you said you're a Christian running, but you've got to cancel out parts of the Bible, otherwise we won't let Christians run. It would be deeply bigoted. And that's what Rudy Giuliani was. Bigoted nonsense, total trash. Ignore every lie he just said. Now, let's talk about, look, there's three different types of people going against Mamdani. There's the economic criticism, which is interesting, legitimate, and debate-worthy. Then there's the people who are opposed to him because he won't bow his head to Israel. And that's Rudy. And that's almost everyone in Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment. So those folks say, no, that's it. This guy won't bow. If he won't bow to Israel, if he's New York first, unacceptable. He has to be Israel first. And that's absurd. And they're deeply racist and they're bigots, and I can't stand it. So there's other critiques of Mamdani we can get into, but in terms of this whole attack against him being Muslim and him not kissing Israel's ass is totally not relevant to New York and is only an argument made by bigots. So I hope I've been clear enough.
I think you've made your position very clear. Geraldo, welcome back.
Well, I think several things. Nice to see you, Piers and panel. I think, first of all, he has used the expression intifada. He wants to globalize the intifada, and he speaks about it quite often. Let me finish. Secondly, I agree with you. I agree with you. Please, it's not. It's on the record. Just look it up. The second thing is that the whole notion.
He's never said it.
The whole notion of moving the tax burden in New York from the richer, whiter neighborhoods to the richer, whiter neighborhoods, as if the richer, whiter neighborhoods don't pay enough in tax. We've had enormous flight of the people who do pay tax to the suburbs and to other states. And all we have to do is increase the tax, the real estate tax, even more under his proposal, and you'll have no taxable base. You'll have no rich white people to pay the tax. The third thing, and curiously, I agree in a twisted way about the situation with the Palestinians. I believe that what you saw, and this is the underreported headline, I believe, is that you saw a cataclysmic shift in the Jewish vote. It was a generational shift. Older Jews and in neighborhoods that were 100% Jews, like the Hasidic neighborhoods and others, they went with Governor Cuomo in the Democratic primary just passed. The people who voted against Cuomo and for Mandami were the young Jewish voters who are activists, who are in the hundreds of thousands in New York. They are, half of that generation in the city of New York. They are part of the lifeblood of the city. They rejected their parents' Israel always and forever, no matter what kind of view, and they are sick to death of what's happening in Gaza. They can't stand to see Israel continue to wage this very, very unfair, violent campaign against civilians in Gaza. Now you're not talking about Iran, you're not talking about Syria or Hezbollah or the big picture, but you're talking specifically about what's going on in Gaza. It has sickened. I know I have kids in New York. Two of my children live in New York. Two now, I just hesitate because one just moved, but two live in New York. They vote in New York. I voted for Giuliani. I voted for Bloomberg. But to see these kids are rejecting their parents, Israel always and forever, no matter what, and saying, wait a second, Israel has to be held to the same standard as any other nation. We're not going to let you push us. And we are voting, and they rejected the Democratic establishment candidate and the old school ways, and they embrace something much more energetic and humane and compassionate, I believe.
Yeah.
So a little bit of contention there with getting Mandami talking about the globalize the intifada whole situation, where, I tried looking it up because Cenk Uygur says he's never said it. Geraldo says just go look it up. I went and looked it up. I couldn't find him actually saying it. But what I did find is him actually not condemning it. And I've got a little clip I'm going to throw in right quick.
Through the work that I do.
But quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president, who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my...
Okay, so... yeah, well, that doesn't really speak too much right there, right? Like, we can all agree to this, like, what that actually speaks to. Now, a lot of people, the pundit class, they'll take this as he's always advocating for globalizing the intifada. That doesn't really say that, though. Let's be honest about that. He's not advocating for it, but he's also not condemning it, which is a bad thing, to be honest with you. Like, what it speaks to me, and, if we're being honest, y'all let me know down in the comments section, all that speaks to me is that he's trying to capture a group of people that happen to agree with that type of philosophy right there. Globalize the intifada. He just doesn't want to come out and condemn it outright because he doesn't want to cut that block off, right? Like, you don't want to burn any bridges when you're in politics. That's for sure. Like, for the most part, right? Like, so he's trying to get that group of people because that group of people happens to be a large contingent in New York. So there you go. But if you're going to attack this guy, attack the socialism, attack the Marxism, for goodness sakes, because there's plenty of that to go around, right? Like, the raising taxes on the corporations, That's not that terrible of an idea. I don't like taxes at all. Like I'm completely against it, but it's not terrible. It's 2% from what I can tell. From everything I've researched, it's 2%. You know, the free buses, how are you going to pay for that? That's one thing. But when we're getting into, you know, he's mentioned several times seizing the means of production. That's communist rhetoric 101 right there. That's bad news. That's a very, very bad sign. He's talking about the free buses, the government-owned grocery stores, because he's worried about this, right? Like, so all of this is deep communism and will destroy many, many businesses in New York, just outright. How are you going to compete with, you got a government-run grocery store that, you know, they don't care about profits because they're not in it for the profits, so they can sell their products for a lot cheaper. How are you going to compete with that as a, you know, locally owned business or even a chain store, for goodness sakes? It's hard to compete with that. Sure, you'll have some, but it's going to destroy many, 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 many businesses. And over time, will destroy the economy in New York. Like, this is just economics 101. I mean, anybody can tell, right? Like, socialism, let's get into that right quick, and communism. Okay, so, like, it's not going to work in America, for goodness sakes, right? Like, there is a dream world where you can get to, but you have to have homogeny in your population. Everybody has to be on the same page. You cannot have diversity of ideas. You cannot have diversity of thought. You can't have all these diverse voices for communism to work. Everything has to be homogenous all the way across the board. You have to have pretty much lemmings as your serf class. I mean, do you even want to create these situations where you have the serf class over here, the plebeians that they wake up in the morning and they go to work and that's it? Like, no. But it's not going to work in America. You can't make New York socialist and think the economy is going to be just fine. We're going to work for New Yorkers. No, I'm sorry. That's not going to work, my dude. So these people need to attack that heavily and hard and run with that instead of attacking this guy's philosophy, attacking his religion. That's not going to work, y'all. It's just not. Let's keep going.
Yes,
Not
no.
just
Okay.
black
You don't know what the hell
so
you're talking
All
about.
right, let's all talk at once. Cenk, you go. You go.
Okay, so a bunch of misnomers there. First of all, it was the highest voter turnout in a Democratic primary in a long time. I was part of the AOC campaign. We were counting on low voter turnout. Not in this case. The tide has changed. The younger people, like Geraldo said, are voting for change, and middle class is voting for change. So you guys play word games. But down to the main question that Piers was asking. Look, there's some of his policies that I don't agree with. I don't agree with defund the police. I wouldn't have had government-run grocery stores at the top of my list. I just wouldn't have, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just wouldn't have prioritized it. So free buses, that's super interesting. I want to see how it works. These are not my policies, but the Democrats in New York elected him. And so let's let him give it a shot, right? So in terms of, you know, defunding the police, again, let's be careful, and he is careful. He at least says it the right way. I don't like the phrase at all, but what he's talking about is moving some portion of the money towards social services. So, okay, you could say, I don't want to try that. That's fine. You've got a general election coming up. But a lot of his economic policies are for change. That's the third issue that I mentioned, Piers, in the beginning. And so overall, I'm for change. I'm against the establishment. So if this brother wants to try the grocery stores, he wants to try free buses, etc., let him take a shot at it. We've already seen what the establishment has to offer, and it's nothing but pulp. It's driven this country into the ground. I don't want another Cuomo. I don't want another Adams. I want change.
Well, it's really, well, okay. It's really,
York.
let me just, I want to ask Geraldo actually first, then come to you, Lindy, because it's interesting actually that what Cenk just said, because the conservative writer, Rod Dreher, likened Mandami's win to Trump's. He said New York left-wing voters, quotes, lashed out against what they regard as a failed liberal establishment, electing a charismatic populist who promised a clear break with the past. We on the right can shake our heads and laugh at how dumb New York liberals and progressives were to choose a candidate as politically inexperienced and radical as Mandami, but don't miss that this was also a referendum on the Democratic Party itself. And, you know, I do remember, Geraldo, when in 2015 Donald Trump came down the famous elevator saying, I'm going to run for president. Everyone mocking and laughing and saying he's got no experience. This is a ridiculous candidate, quoting all sorts of incendiary things he'd said before, blah, 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 blah. And he won. And he's now won again. So is it mad for the Democrats to actually go for a young, kind of their version of Trump?
This is where I disagree with the characterization right here. I don't find any sort of similarities to Donald Trump here, except for popularity, possibly, right? It's a guy coming out of nowhere. That's where they stop, right? Everybody, like the corporate press just came out by the droves, all of them, and said Donald Trump is a radical right-wing nut job. But was that true? It wasn't. This guy absolutely is radical. He's got very radical policies that are far removed from the norm in the United States, and I think there is the problem. Therein lies the problem. We'll expound upon that here in a second, but that's, the similarities stop at popularity, for crying out loud. You can't compare him to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been the most moderate candidate in every election Donald Trump has been in. As a matter of fact, he's been the most centrist out of all of them. More center than Hillary Clinton. She was far leftist at this point. Donald Trump leans right these days, but that's only because the left continues to progress themselves right off the damn map, and it's fascinating to watch. But, Donald Trump has been the same Donald Trump since Donald Trump came into existence, for goodness sakes. Politically is what I'm talking about. So, there are vast differences here, and there's no comparison, right? There's no comparison at all. This guy is Marxist, socialist. He's pushing these wild ideas. Donald Trump wasn't pushing any wild ideas. Close the border, for goodness sakes. Fiscal conservatism. What? This guy's pushing communism, y'all. That's just nuts in this country. It's not going to work, right? Even China. Look at China. China is a good example here, because a lot of people like to point to China. Yeah, but look what they went through, for goodness sakes, to get to that. And what did they have to do? They had to open their markets up to make that country work. They had to absorb capitalism and insert that into their communism to make it work. So it's not really communism over there. It's got its characteristics, but it's more capitalist than communist at this point. So once again, the communism doesn't work, but that's a problem, because people are, like Jenks said, I agree with that. People are tired of the establishment. They want change. This guy comes in, starts talking about, all these grocery stores and free buses and raising taxes on the corporations and all this other nonsense. And he's sucked up the youth vote. He's sucked up that popularity. And I think the corporate press is helping boost him beyond what his popularity should be at this point. And that's a problem. That's a problem, because these young, naive leftists, they don't know just how bad communism and socialism can be when you try to insert socialism into capitalism. It's not going to work. It's not going to be like China's, because they did it in reverse. Yeah, it's not going to work the opposite way around. You're not going to be able to insert your socialist into your capitalism and think that that's going to work. People are going to flee, and it's going to destroy the economy. But let's keep going.
By the way, wouldn't that be beautiful, guys?
Well, actually, it would be an amazing thing. It would be an amazing thing. And I actually thought that, Jake, that the way Geraldo framed it earlier, that hundreds of young Jewish people, male and female, who actually do not share the view that of their parents and grandparents, that you have to have just blind, devoted loyalty to Israel, particularly if its government is behaving in the way that it's currently behaving in Gaza.
And they voted for a Muslim mayor. And isn't that a beautiful thing about America? Isn't that a beautiful thing about America, that we don't care about religion, that young Jewish voters and young Christian and Muslim voters vote for a Muslim candidate because they believe in his economic message and his message of justice? That's what America is supposed to be all about, that we forget about this race and religion stuff and vote on the substance.
You talk about him implementing change, but all of his promises are lies. When we can go through and debunk every single one. For example, he says he wants to offer free buses, but guess what's going to happen then? If you don't charge anything for buses, there's no funding for transportation coming in. So how are you going to maintain your infrastructure fleet? And if you control rent, the supply of housing is going to decrease and the quality will decrease as well. And most importantly, though, who's going to pay for it when the governor of New York herself Kathy Hochul vowed that she would not be raising taxes. So every single thing he said was actually a lie. Either he knew it or he doesn't. I don't know which is better. Is it deception
it's not a lie.
Well, I just told you. I gave
Lindy,
you
it's
three
not a lie.
examples of things that could just cannot happen because the governor is not raising taxes. He can't operate in a vacuum. Okay, not everyone is a communist. You have to partner with other people in the government and collaborate. It's a whole of government approach.
So,
it's not a
Lindy,
microcosm.
You're saying you disagree with his approach, but to say that it's a lie doesn't make sense. No, he really does want free buses, and he has a plan for free buses. Now, you can say, hey, I don't think that plan is going to work, and I think it's going to have negative consequences. Well, good news. Let's hope we're about to find out, okay?
Well,
and maybe you're wrong. Maybe the free buses totally work out, and in fact, there are different ways to finance it.
I think he went into the campaign knowing that he was offering false promises to the New York people. Another thing that I find extremely alarming is saying that he said his ultimate goal is to seize the means of production. That is something straight out of Animal Farm right there. It has no place in the United States of America.
He certainly has. He's got a lot of quotes on his track record.
I kind of have to agree with Lindy on this one. Like, anybody that looks into this or thinks about it logically, like the free buses, the government grocery stores, and all those policies, get rid of the police, like what? Anybody that looks into that, thinks about it rationally, they don't believe it. They can't think that this is going to work. Look at the results when it's been implemented in the past. It's never worked before. I don't know if we've ever tried to defund the police and install psychologists, for goodness sakes. Like, what? How do you think that's going to work out when you're having to deal with violent people? Like, it's just wild to think about. So I think he is lying. I think all of the socialists are lying. I think it's all a giant grift, if you ask me. They just want your money, and that's pretty much it. And then they're gone the next day. But let's keep going because we're about to shift topics pretty hard.
Yes, he's got a lot of quotes on his track record. I want to pivot just before we finish this. Rudy, I want to talk to you about Donald Trump, because you could argue the last 2 or 3 weeks have been the best, really, of his entire time as president, first and second term combined. You've got this extraordinary strike on Iran's nuclear capabilities and a ceasefire coming when people did not anticipate that happening so quickly. He's got NATO to stump up to 5% of GDP on individual spending, a massive win at the Supreme Court, of course. Peace deal in Africa. He brought peace between India and Pakistan when that was flaring up. He's moving hard to try and get peace in Gaza. He's moving hard to try and get peace in Ukraine. If we end up at the end of the year and there is peace in Ukraine, there is peace in Gaza, and all the other things I've mentioned here, not to mention the southern border has pretty much stopped now having anyone coming over illegally, and the economy, if that is purring away as well, given that the stock market is pretty much back where it was before the tariff war started, so he's obviously pleasing the markets. If you put all that together, this could be a stunning, successful year for Trump.
Well, Piers knows a lot of ifs, but they're all ifs that he's aiming toward. And I think people, because of their insanity about him, haven't recognized that there's a different Donald Trump since Butler County. Much more serious, much more concerned about the future, much more concerned about life and death, and frankly, much more spiritual.
Yeah,
it's a different Donald Trump than the one Geraldo and you and I grew up with.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Cenk, I mean, putting aside the fact you can't stand him, do you acknowledge he's had a lot of wins?
Well,
look, I give credit
for Cenk, Rudy. That's for Cenk.
Rudy, that one's for me too. Yeah.
Well, I know
so,
look,
I give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, give him credit.
On some things. So, look, I think that the budget bill's a disaster. I think that it's going to pass and it's going to create $4 trillion deficit. And they always give away tax cuts for the rich and then go, oh, golly gee, I don't know how we wound up with such a big debt. It's because of Republicans who passed these giant tax cuts. And I can go, and I don't like Marines in the streets. There's a million things that I criticize Donald Trump on that, and he deserves that criticism. But the proof's going to be in the pudding, right? So if he walks back all the tariffs, as he's in the middle of doing now, he closes the border, and this is the critical part. if he gets a two-state solution, which just sounds so unbelievable, right? But if he gets that to happen, then there's no way that you could stop his popularity. Because at that point, he will be a peace president. He probably will win a Nobel Peace Prize. And it'll cement his legacy, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. But that's a giant if, right?
Sure.
But if he allows Israel, which is much more likely, if he allows Israel to continue the slaughter in Gaza, he continues having them agitate for war in Iran, and he continues with the tariffs, he continues with Marines in the streets and National Guard in the streets, et cetera, then he's going to continue to be more and more unpopular. So the jury is very much out right now.
All right, I'm glad to see that Cenk is at least acknowledging that Donald Trump is working his tail off right now to try to get his agenda over the line. You know, and what's fascinating to me, and we've been heavily covering this the past several days, the past couple of weeks actually, you know, Republicans are coming in. Republicans are trying to sabotage Donald Trump, as a matter of fact, with the big, beautiful bill. We've talked about that heavily in the last couple of videos, where they're adding all this poisonous garbage nonsense to mandatory spending to try to get people to vote for this thing, right? Like they're only pausing Planned Parenthood funding for a year. Like, what Democrat are you guys trying to get to vote for this thing? Because no Democrats are going to vote for this, because you guys are putting work requirements into Medicaid, which is a good thing, by the way, because Medicaid can't sustain itself. Social Security can't sustain itself. And then Trump's adding the tax cuts to Social Security, which is a good thing, because I don't think when the government gives you money, why do they tax that? Like, that makes no sense to me. Why the government, when it gives you money, taxes anything, doesn't make sense. But hey, it is what it is. But Donald Trump is working tirelessly right now on many different fronts. The Nobel Peace Prize, once again, like Cenk was saying, if he can get the Israel-Hamas thing, Gaza situation worked out, which they're about to sign, they're deliberating a ceasefire deal right now. Hopefully they agree to terms, bring it to a ceasefire, and then we can move on to more peace. With that, he's trying to expand the Abraham Accords. If he can achieve that, that deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. He's already shut down one war. He's trying to shut down 2 more wars right now. Almost started a war, for goodness sakes. It's like, this dude's doing so much right now on so many different fronts. It's really, really hard to keep up with. But if you follow this channel and subscribe, hey, we cover news, folks, and we cover Donald Trump heavily on what he's doing, the moves he's making, what we like, what we don't like. I'm not all some just MAGA guy and Trump can do no wrong. No, he's doing a lot of things wrong, right? There's several things he's doing, right? Like bombing Iran. I didn't like that at all. You know, some of these lawsuits I don't like. I don't care for those too much. Some of them are good. Some of them are very good, like birthright citizenship, that executive order. That needs to be answered. Personhood needs to be answered, which Democrats stepped on a rake on that one, because now they have somebody on that lawsuit who is a pregnant woman. So inadvertently, if the Supreme Court agrees and sides with the Democrats on this one, that will inadvertently ban abortion. So, once again, folks, there's landmines all over the place with these lawsuits. But Donald Trump is doing his best to work through these things, and he's got saboteurs all around him. So, once again, like he said, the proof will be in the pudding. We will see when all of this concludes to see just how successful. And that's going to be the question. How successful is Donald Trump? It's not going to be if he's a failed president or anything like that. He's already a net positive at this point with just closing that border. That's a net positive. Peace agreements. I mean, those are net positive things. His foreign policy is top notch. No new wars, for goodness sakes. It's great. I love to see it, but let's keep going.
He said, though, about Trump being a changed man since the assassination attempt. I've definitely detected that when I've talked to him. I also think he's a man who got a second lease at life, a second lease at the presidency, and he's on a mission, a real fast-track mission to get stuff done, because he knows come the midterms that things may slow down. He might get paralyzed in terms of his ability to get stuff through. So he's on a mission in these first 2 years, I think, to get as much done as he possibly can, and to do it in a pretty blunt and often quite savage way, because he knows from his first term that if you don't do that, you won't get stuff done.
Well, I think I agree and disagree. I disagree because I believe that his draconian policies toward undocumented immigrants in this country, not the border's fine, sealed the border, but the people who are here, who have proven to be law-abiding and hardworking and God-fearing and family-oriented, what they are living in terror now. I'll tell you right now, Piers, I've never seen anything like it, particularly Hispanic. It hits close to home. It is you can't find workers now. Service people. The Hamptons are in panic over our affluent holiday spa in the eastern end of Long Island now. Can't find Mexicans to come and work there. It's shocking and it's awful. In terms of his spirituality, just very, very briefly, he's been always extremely easy to underestimate. He has all kinds of enemies everywhere he turns, but he has gone through the list of achievements that you listed. There is so impressive, it's historic, and he's a slam dunk, I think, for the Nobel Prize, particularly if he get Gaza and Ukraine, if he can figure those out. Then God bless him, he deserves it, absolutely.
Yeah, Lindy, I mean, I thought Gerardo made a good point there. I don't understand about the deportation policy, why they didn't stick to what they originally said they were going to start with, which is just kick all the criminals out, because that seemed to have universal support. Excuse me, support. Well, if you were here undocumented in America and you committed a crime, that's it, you're gone. Everyone would have cheered that. It's the fact that they've expanded it very quickly. And they've let people sort of slip through the net where it clearly looks unfair or there's a lack of due process. That's now become to dominate the narrative.
I just don't understand how Democrats can get away with advocating for a serf class, for second-class citizens. That's what they're doing with these criminal aliens, and these illegal immigrants, or whatever the hell they want to call them, undocumented workers. Like, that's a serf class. They don't have right to vote. They don't have all the civil rights that we have. They don't get paid the same. They don't have all the health benefits. They're not supposed to be on Medicare, Medicaid. They're not supposed to get Social Security. None of those things. Why would they advocate for that? I don't understand this. And plus, they're also, once again, advocating for unequal application of the law, which means, once again, if we do not apply our laws equally, apply our standards equally, apply our principles equally, we do not live in a free society, folks. If somebody can do something and get away with it, and somebody else cannot, we do not live in a free society. That's what that means. That's what Democrats are advocating for. They have taken their whole slavery shtick and, modified it a little bit for the modern age. Since the civil rights era, it's changed. They're no longer slaves. They're just second-class citizens. They're illegal, undocumented migrants. That's what they are. They're constantly advocating for these people, saying they just want a better life. Maybe so. But let me ask the first question that should pop into everybody's brain when you hear that argument. They just want a better life. They see economic opportunities. Well, let me ask you something. Your first act, if you want a better life and you decide to pick up everything from where you're at and move to another country, because you want economic opportunities and a better life, is the first thing you do going to be to break the laws of that country that you go to? No, that's not what rational human beings think. So I just don't get this idea that Democrats want this slave class that can't vote. They don't have all the civil rights. They can't get the Medicare and Medicaid and all that, Social Security. They don't have all the benefits that we do. It's just wild to think that Democrats actually advocate for this, but they don't tell you that. They try to tug on your heartstrings and try to manipulate you into believing that, oh, we're compassionate. We just care about these people. They don't, folks. They want a serf class. Let's keep going.
Geraldo's point that already people are struggling now because so many people are being deported and there's a terror of being deported. And there's clearly a qualitative difference between somebody who's in the country illegally, who commits a crime, and somebody who maybe came over 10 years ago, 12 years ago, has had kids in America, has got a job, is paying taxes. These are two different cases, aren't they?
So we should triage, but they
and
also broke our laws.
statistic.
What is the point of having laws if they're just broken? Okay, if we should have a sensible system, if you want to come to America, you got to be able to contribute to the success of this country.
Please, let me one
you cannot be
sentence.
leaving
Let Gerardo respond.
My family and I came here. I came to this amazing country.
God bless your family. So did all
we
of our
never took a
families.
handout.
God
I'm
bless
still
them.
talking.
42% of our agricultural workers are undocumented. And nobody disagrees with that statistic. 42% of the people who till our fields, who reap our crops, who feed us, 42% are undocumented. They're not the tabloid 1 in a million who commits a heinous crime.
My point is that we should triage. Yes, Piers, that we should prioritize the criminals, but anyone who comes here illegally does not have a right to be in this country.
Of course, but the problem with that is that there are apparently up to 80 million people who are undocumented in the United States. You're going to throw them all out? I mean, that seems to me a ridiculous aspiration.
We don't have the resources to throw them all out, but my personal view is that you should be respectful to the laws and regulations.
I don't disagree with that, but I do think you can't throw out 80 million people, particularly in a country, Cenk, which is founded on immigrants. Cenk.
Yeah, so I'm also a naturalized citizen, and my family came here because we love this country. And if you saw America the way that I see it, I think you'd love it even more. So I get it that people are frustrated that people are coming in illegally, but they didn't come here. The great majority of them didn't come here for anything but economic opportunity for their families. So look, people want to close the border, and Trump has done a good job of closing the border. Credit where credit is due. That is what people voted for. But I think Joe Rogan is right. They did not, and I think Geraldo's right. They did not vote for ICE to go in the middle of the country, in the middle of our cities, and uproot people that have been here 10 years, 20 years, that are doing super hard work. We should have a reasonable, sane immigration policy where we have a pathway to citizenship. We should acknowledge that we need these workers, and we should get them decent wages and a decent policy, by the way, and close the border. Do it right. Instead, what's happening now is we have undocumented immigration mainly because of corporate power. They want to be able to pay these guys less. They want to be able to use their work and not give them the right credit for it, or, by the way, use their work instead of Americans and not pay them the proper wages. Okay. So the real problem is corporate rule, and that's why we can't get to it.
But I would love to see you demonstrate the same sympathy to the victims of the rapes and the murders committed by illegal aliens, by the millions of people that Biden let into this country. Can I address that real quick? Unvetted.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, natural-born citizens are the most violent, most criminal group in the country compared to undocumented immigrants and naturalized citizens. So naturalized citizens like me and Lindy are 4 times safer. We commit only a quarter of the crime on average. Undocumented. Hold on, let me finish. It's almost over. Undocumented immigrants commit half the crime of natural-born citizens. So does that mean we should kick out the natural-born citizens or natural-born citizens?
Tell that to Lincoln Riley, by the way, who's no longer alive.
The number of criminals are small in each one of those categories. And demagoguing about criminality when on average undocumented immigrants commit half the crime of the people that are born here is just demagoguery.
The one thing I would like
driving towards
Lindy, we got to wrap up, I'm afraid.
But you're an immigrant in this country.
Lindy, I'm going to wrap it. I'm sorry.
You should not be committing any crimes.
Well, I agree with that. But what I would say is the one thing I would like, as part of all this, I would like someone like me, who's lived and worked in America and has a home there for 20 years now, I would like to be described as something else on my visa other than exceptional alien. I think there's something very unfriendly about the description of me as an. I mean, I like to think I'm exceptional. It's the word alien really pisses me off.
Okay, so what Cenk just said right there about undocumented migrants, commit less crimes than native-born citizens. That's not true. That's a manipulated statistic, folks, that they use constantly to bludgeon people over the head when they try to make rational arguments. That is what they do. There are no studies out there that actually look at criminal alien criminality versus native-born American criminality. There are none, folks. Every single one of them that you will find include legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants and all that other stuff. So they always include this other group to pad the numbers. It's fascinating. Why don't they do studies about that? Why? Because every single criminal alien is a criminal. They broke the law to come into the country. So by definition, they all commit crimes at a higher rate than native-born Americans. It's fascinating, folks. It's a manipulated statistic, so don't buy into that one if you ever hear it out in the wild, or if you're ever having an argument with your woke aunt or somebody like that, your liberal parents, or, anybody out there. It's just fascinating how they make all these arguments. But once again, if you listen, going back to the first part of that clip, that's what they're advocating for. Cenk Uygur even said it. It's all about the corporations. It's all about having these criminal aliens come in here and doing the work that American citizens just refuse to do, which is, once again, not true. That's because they don't want to get paid the same as the criminal aliens, because they pay them less and they don't have benefits. They don't have paid time off. They don't have paid vacation, none of that stuff. Plus, it's seasonal work. Like a lot of people, Americans, especially Gen Z, they want permanent jobs, year-round jobs. A lot of people don't want to do that type of work, but, it is what it is. That's something that we need to balance, folks. And, Donald Trump going after just the guy that's been here for 30 or 40 years working a farm. He comes in seasonally and works the farm and leaves. Look, he's cutting back on that. I just read a news article the other day. He mentioned something about it in the corporate press, which they took and ran with. It was a total mischaracterization of what Donald Trump said. Said, we're going to do something about it. And they said, Donald Trump's going to stop deporting undocumented workers, blah, 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 blah. That's not what he said, though. But he said they're going to do something about that. He's going to cut back enforcement on that. That's what the news article said. Don't know if that's exactly what Trump is going to do. It's hard to ever tell exactly what Trump is going to do. He's kind of a loose cannon sometimes, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing, like we saw in Iran, which a lot of people cheered for that. I didn't really cheer for that. I don't like military intervention. I don't like the fact that Iran was enriching their uranium up to that certain point, which is well beyond anything you would need for medical purposes, for civilian purposes, power plants or anything like that. Well beyond. But, a lot of people made the argument, and hey, it's a rational argument to make, that was just a deterrent. That was a latent deterrent, as they call it. We could go further than this and make a bomb, don't bomb us type of thing, which that could be their play on that. But at the same time, threatening to go past that point, a lot of people say that's a line that we can't cross. Donald Trump seems to agree with that. I happen to disagree with that, but who knows? We'll never know. If he destroyed their ability to create a bomb, we'll never know the answer to that question. But, they can always rebuild and come back later. So it is what it is. But I love these debates, and I think I've rambled on for long enough. So y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and all over the place with everybody at all times. I know that's kind of hard to do, but think about it if you would. And sign up, become a member, help this channel expand and grow and serve you guys. So y'all do all that for me, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.